There's a very common claim that Roman Catholics will make against Protestants, and one of these is that Protestants removed 7 books from the Bible. For one, didn't happen. For two, usually they're referring to Martin Luther, who said that he didn't believe that they were divinely inspired, which is actually something that Cardinal Cajetan, a devout Roman Catholic and a proponent against Martin Luther in the Reformation, actually himself said as well. And the reason for this is because it was an ongoing debate throughout all of church history. There was never actually an explanation as to what was considered divinely inspired out of the books that were typically held in the Bible. Yes, there were 73 that were typically held in the Bible, but the apocryphal text, the 7 extra books that Martin Luther moved to the back of the Bible, by the way, he didn't remove them, he simply moved them to the back. And he actually classified them in the same way that St. Jerome classified them. He classified them as right for liturgical purposes, but not for divinely inspired doctrine. So there's no actual removal of it. He acknowledged that they were important to the church. He actually acknowledged that they were very valuable for liturgical purposes, but he didn't think they were divinely inspired, and so did a lot of other figures throughout church history. It was an ongoing debate since the 1st century up until the Reformation. There was no actual ecumenical council that defined the actual biblical canon up until the Council of Trent. You have the Council of Rome, you have the Council of Carthage, and I'm forgetting the other one. Oh, the Council of Hippo, that all said that they were divinely inspired, but those were not ecumenical councils. Those were regional councils. Those were local councils. Those were not councils that had any binding church or authority over the entirety of the church. Those had no binding authority over the whole of Christendom. The Council of Trent in 1546 was when they decided that they were going to include them as divinely inspired scriptures. So the actual inclusion of them as divinely inspired through an ecumenical council didn't begin until after the time of the Reformation. So Martin Luther, going in, seeing these scriptural books that aren't actually divinely inspired scripture, which you can see throughout church history through the testimony of St. Jerome and the fact that there was an argument ongoing in the church up until that very day as regards to their reliability, he simply moved them to the back, saying, hey, if we don't know if they're divinely inspired, then why don't we take these and put them in the back and use them for liturgical purposes as was intended in the original inclusion of them, and then focus on the rest of the 66-book canon that actually is divinely inspired that no one questions. Yes, he had his questions about James and Revelation and I think one other epistle, but he still kept them in there as divinely inspired because he recognized the value of the testimony of every other person throughout church history and his fellow Protestants and Reformers that they were divinely inspired. So the argument that Protestants simply remove 7 books from the Bible for no good reason is completely unfounded in church history.